fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We're back. Another episode of Unchurched, back by popular demand. For those of you that heard the sunscreen episode that got a ton of comments, it was certainly in your face. And I learned a ton personally about sunscreen, and we talked about my story and your story. And so can I call you doctor, professor, NASA engineer? What's the title, Ben Rall? I know you're a doctor.
I've been called a lot worse. Let's say that, you know. So I'm not. You could. That's okay. I appreciated for once, you know, since it was on your podcast, you get all the hate mail from that episode, not me. So thank you for sifting through that, so I didn't have to get it. You can read it, you know. So when you say popular demand, is this where you're gonna throw all the bad, hate mail at me? This is like I'm on the spot.
No, we're not. This is not going to be like reading mean tweets or anything. And what was interesting though, there was a couple people that had the hate mail, if you will, from that. But by and large, the majority of it was just like, oh my gosh, like you guys opened up my eyes. I have never actually looked on the back of my sunscreen. And a couple people said they went shopping and just like, oh my gosh, the stuff is literally chock full of chemicals, and why isn't anyone talking about this? But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about stewarding your body, and I'm going to kick it off because some of you might be wondering, all right, what are they talking about here? And I know a lot of us want to, be able to justify, our time listening to stuff like this, and what does this mean for me? And we talked offline. A mutual friend of ours named Austin had posted something on Facebook recently. It's it's January. He's looking back at last year and the year before, and he's like, man, what's really interesting is the times that I've taken the most care of my body. I'm talking about like feeling just jacked, like it's a priority to take care of my body, have been the times that I've actually made the most money. Like things have just been better. And I look back at my life, and it was the same. There was many times where I was still waking up at 5 a.m. and not working out just because I had so much stuff to do. And that was a time like filled with a lot of anxiety and stress, and I was getting a lot done. But ironically, like I don't look back at those as like good, fulfilling times of my life. It was just feel like I was running a marathon that wouldn't end. And yet the times where I just took a breath and took my time and working out and taking long walks in the morning, looking back, like those are, I would say, the most successful times, both the wealth success to the family life, the relationship with my wife and my kids. And so we want to spend some time talking about stewardship of your body. And you got a pretty wild story. I know, and I haven't even heard the whole thing. So I'm excited to hear it.
Well, I'm excited to be here. And you bring in a lot of, and for listeners, there's this idea of stewardship. There's a lot of, we were even talking, there's a lot of kind of pieces of it, stewarding finances, stewarding the body, stewarding our relationships, stewarding those types of things. And this idea of concept of stewarding or caring for things, I think we innately believe it's important. We change the oil in our car. We probably brush our teeth, hopefully, stuff like that. But I think, and part of this, that we want to talk about today is maybe going, I don't even want to say a little bit deeper, but just discussing it to give us a little more on it. A good friend of mine who happens to be a real good fisherman, a tournament fisherman, right, in the blue marlin world. He's a high performer, like yourself, and he just likes to get after life. And he would certainly be the guy up at 5 a.m. because he has work to do. And he would say that fitness wasn't a major part of his life for a long time, just didn't kind of make the cut, right? And I know there's more to stewarding our bodies than exercise, but using it as an example. And then he really decided to get after it for a season. And so, the fishermen on here that, know about catching marlins and stuff, that's a workout, right? And he's old school, shove the pole in the leg and just grind it out, right? He's not sitting in a chair. And it was funny is it's even made his fishing more enjoyable, right? Because he's not gassed, after 15 minutes and he's got to take breaks. He can enjoy the whole thing. He can feel the energy when he's with his crew and they're out there. And I know he would tell you that it's given his team a competitive edge, right? Just from focus, from attitudes among the crew to, I mean, even this is funny. Some of you'll laugh. They make, when you're out fishing in long days, and they'll make, little bets, if we get one in 20 minutes, if not, you got to do 20 burpees on the deck or, push-up contest. And he said it's really changed the culture of their boat. And I know that we're not talking entirely about that, but there are these subtle things that being aware of stewarding our bodies have ramifications that we don't think about. I read this blog a few years ago, Joe. You ever heard of a pastor by the name of Matthew Barnett? I don't know if you've ever heard that name. He runs something called the Dream Center out in LA. They do a lot of rehabilitation of drug addicts and things like that. And he shared a story one time. He said, we'll slam our coffee and our espresso to make it through the day, because we got work to do. He says, how many times have we come home and slammed a cup of coffee so we could stay up with our kids or our wives? Right. And there's an example of where we kind of need to check ourselves on a lot of things we can steward, right? Making a living's important, but it's not the only thing, right? Making money is a good question. It's just not a good first question, right? So when it comes to stewarding, what we kind of want to talk about today is the physical component. Now, we're on the Unchurched episode, right? Is that fair? Okay, so we talk about, Jesus, and we can talk about God, and we get to talk about what that means for us. And in a very foundational point, first book in the Bible, Genesis, it's a real powerful statement in there that says, he made us, God, in his likeness and image. I mean, that's kind of like a mind-blowing concept, okay? That we're created in the likeness and image of him, so in a very physical sense, okay? Now, fast forward to the end where he dies for us, okay? So we can live and live eternally. So I just want to bookend this for a second to give us perspective. So we're created in a masterpiece. The one thing that he says, was very good, right? And then he loved it and loved us so much, thought we were so valuable that he died for us. Okay. So within that, those two bookends, I think it's fair that we ought to take care of that gift that he's given us. Our life is not our own. Okay. We really should, there's a sense of responsibility, but almost more out of gratitude. Right? Not out of obligation. And we talk about this a lot, Joel, like religion. I'm not into religion. I'm into relationship, right? Religion's a joke to me. I could care less. Relationship with the Creator, my Father, right? I don't want to, that's, you've got kids, I've got kids. My son's kind of getting old enough. He's right on the edge where he still thinks I'm cool, but I know it's coming to where I'm not so cool. I'm not sure when we get there. And so we want to this is about relationship. Our Father in heaven who created us in his likeness and image, really, really, really intelligently. We know God's pretty awesome, pretty amazing, pretty intelligent, beats our heart, breathes our lungs, right? Trillions of cells working together all of the time. And then we get a little portion that we got to take care of, like feed it decent food, move it around a little bit, make sure the stuff we're putting in our heads is pretty decent. That's a really good start. And Joe, the reason I think it's powerful for our listeners is because so many people, you've met them, right? People that love fishing, they can't fish anymore because they can't get on the boat.
Yep.
Right? They or the guy that drops dead at 45 of a heart attack reeling in a fish, or whatever the scenario is, right? I don't want to be morbid on that, but this is about living our best life, right? This stewardship doesn't contain and stifle you. It actually gives you more freedom, right?
Yeah.
Because you got the time to be a better dad. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but if you've experienced that. But
yeah, as I mentioned, I mean, the times where I feel like I have more energy and more love to give, which is back to the relationship part, are the times where my body is in not, I'm not going to ever say peak shape, but for me, it's peak shape. But it's so easy to get sloppy on as well. And it's so easy to, just like I talked about on my alcohol episode, it's so easy to look at someone else. And I'm guilty of this. There was a gentleman that I looked up to back in the financial services side of things. And he was very overweight, very obese, drank wine like it was water, and yet highly successful. And I always said, well, gosh, it was my way of making an excuse to say, well, you know what, I could keep drinking every night. I could have a little bit of wine. He's doing it. He's doing well. He lives in a big 10,000 square foot home. And I was looking at it from that perspective, not knowing a little bit more about him and his some serious health issues that have happened. That kind of stuff catches up to you, and he's lost a lot of his wealth. Like, it's really interesting, how you're a little bit younger and naive, and you look at someone, you put them up on a pedestal, and I mean, they're just destroying their body. With Jimmy Buffett's song, I treat my body like a temple, you treat yours like a tent, and he was doing that. And at some point, it catches up to you. I think it's an illusion to think that you can keep treating your body like that without some sort of consequence.
And so I agree. And I think the reason that conversations like lifestyle often can tend to, rub us the wrong way, because it feels like, who are you to tell me what to do, right? It's my life. And we, here in America especially, right, we love our freedoms. And so I want to make sure that we understand the tone of that way. Like, I'm a doctor. I guess that's my day job, but I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a business person. I just want to win at life, but I want to win righteously, right? I want to win where it's win-win. I want to serve people and they feel served, and it's just that's the way we want to do it, right? So when it comes to things like this, though, however, I think we do need to give a little context. If I went to 100 people on the street and said, hey, should you eat good? Right? They go, yeah, sure, I suppose, right? Should I exercise? Yeah, I should probably do that. So it's not so much that we fight the idea of caring for our bodies, right? And we were talking a little bit. I had a patient one time, and younger, and you would have looked at her and she would have been the picture of health, 20 some years old. And we were just talking. Yeah, she's a mom, and she said, doc, I exercise, I do a lot of good stuff. She goes, the one habit I can't kick is I just love Coca-Cola, right? I love drinking Coke. And so we were just talking. It was kind of a passing conversation. And I said, well, Erin, if you can't seem to quit for yourself, she was a believer in Jesus. And I said, quit for God. And that was it, just kind of went on our way. And she goes, and came back a week or two later, and she goes, hey, doc, I just got to tell you, that comment really affected me, right? So, and it was enough for me to say, you know what, I can do that as a form of worship, right? So again, when we go back to this idea that we were created in likeness and image of God, that He found us so valuable that He came back and died on the cross for us, this idea, this reality here, then Joe, again, I'm with you. I'm not perfect by any means, wouldn't claim to be. I need God's grace on a minute by minute basis. Okay. But that doesn't stop us, or shouldn't stop us from being intentional the best we can to the level of knowledge we have about it, take care of ourselves. The friends of yours that you were talking about that flipped over the bottle now and looked at the sunscreen. And if that helps them make a better decision about that just by choosing A over B because they have more information, there might be people on here that never thought about, man, as weird as it might sound, you might say, I never really thought about the fact that me, not regularly exercising, or me living on, some foods I know I shouldn't be, or maybe alcohol, like you said, or other health habits. Man, you know what? I remember a friend of mine who's got diagnosed at a young age with cancer, and he beat it naturally. But you remember him saying, yeah, living this way is hard, but it's harder to leave my family, right? It's going to be harder to lose my health, right? So we have to put these juxtapositions, in play so we can, to help ourselves make better decisions that I think we all want to make. So you had mentioned my story, and if it's okay, Joe, I'll just talk through that real quick.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
So back in the day, younger guy, and I was an athlete. But just loved it. And my sport happened to be boxing. And so I'm from South Dakota, and so we do a lot more lake fishing up there than we do, open water fishing, but lake fishing, and a little more laid back, walleyes and northerns and things like that. But I love boxing, and so and I was decent at it, and enough to move up the ranks. And so what was happening is I was in the group that was going to be allowed to compete for a spot on the Olympics. All right. Now, you don't get chosen, you got to win the tournament. So it wasn't a given that I would get there, but that was my group. And as I'm out at the Olympic Training Center, I started having all these digestive problems. I mean, pretty serious. I'm not talking like, I have the burps, or something like that. I'm talking like
a little gas.
The heck is wrong with me, right? So I didn't know what to do. And I wasn't necessarily living, Joe, at this point, my mindset had really very little to do with Christ, at least on a daily basis. I had given my life to Christ at 13, but I did what, unfortunately, many of us do. I had walked away pretty strongly, right? He was not the leader. I'm very grateful that I did that at 13, and God's grace certainly was there, but I wasn't doing my part. So anyway, and our part is so little. That's the funny part. He doesn't ask for much. It's amazing. So I go to the doctor, and they do that. They go down this way and they go up that way. Save the details. And I remember waking up, and the doctor said, "You have precancerous lesions throughout your entire digestive system. So many we just stopped counting." I remember him showing me pictures, just these bleeding, like scabs oozing, disgusting. And there's the details for those listeners that you want. And so I said, "What do I do?" And he said, "You need to take these 2 medications." And I remember I was 19 or so at the time. And I was like, man, I don't want to do that, but what do I know? Right. I don't want to die, kind of a concept. So I said, okay. And I remember said to the guy, and this is just a side note, but the guy himself was far from the picture of health, right? Probably a couple 100 pounds overweight. And I don't mean that judgmentally. I'm just, right. If you're going to ask for fishing advice, go to the guy that's fished a lot, right? I mean, probably makes sense, right? So if you want health advice, it's good to know somebody that has, a healthy life. And so I said, "Are these safe?" I don't know why I even asked that. "Are these drugs safe?" I don't even know what I was thinking at the time. And he goes, "Oh yes, I take one every day myself." Now that should have been my first clue, in a sense, right? Is to meaning the where I was getting my information. Long story short, I took those drugs for 3.5 years. If I didn't take them, I'd have massive symptoms. The problem was when I took them, they shut down my digestive system. So I was 165 pounds. That was my weight class. I gained 70 pounds on those medications.
70.
70. I got kicked out of the Olympic Training Center. Kicked out. I mean, I couldn't make weight. And so, they said, "Hey, we love you, but, can't stay here." And so I kind of left hometown hero a little bit. The kid makes it, making a run for the Olympics to come back and, pardon my language, but sick, fat, and depressed. My dream was over, if you will. Okay. Here I am now. I came home. I left, the fit guy. I come back, look like I, gave up on life, and I didn't know what to do. And so I'm taking these drugs every day. I didn't have any insurance, I remember, so I'm paying drugs money out of my pocket, and then one day, Joe, after about 3.5 years of suffering, I met a doctor. He happened to be a chiropractor, and he just said a couple of things that were really simple to me. It sounds simple now, maybe to listeners. He said, "Ben, I don't think your body just forgot how to digest food at 19, and I don't think the cause of your problem is a deficiency in 2 drugs." And I remember saying to him, I said, "Well, I'm with it. I'm okay, but how come nobody's ever told me this? Like, if this is true, what the heck? I've been struggling like this for 3.5 years." So I had been going in every 6 months and getting scans redone. Okay. My lesions were either getting worse or staying the same. They weren't getting better. I wasn't getting better. I'm having, of course, the side effects now. My skin would break out in rashes and just felt sick, couldn't eat certain foods anymore. So what happens is I do that. Through the process of this doctor's care, within a week, I got off the medications. And I'm telling you, Joe, if I didn't take these things, I was in writhing pain, might be an extreme, but wildly uncomfortable, where all you could do is sit and think about how bad you feel. Okay. And to the point that I literally got off the medications and have never looked back. I lost 70 pounds in 4 months.
Whoa.
It literally melted off my body after my body restored to normal. And then went in 2 months later after that, and all my lesions were healed. Okay. Now here's my statement to listeners. So that's amazing. It almost sounds miraculous, but really what we just saw was the divine design of the body. Okay. What we're witnessing here is the body's designed to heal. Okay. I was interfering with that unknowingly. I wasn't trying not to be a steward, Joe. I had interferences in my body. Yeah. Some of it was nutritionally, not fitness. I worked out all the time. That was part of training for the boxing. I had pressure in my spine that was affecting the function of my nerves to my digestion. I didn't know that. It took a doctor to help me find that. And that's what changed my life. That's why I became a chiropractor. So since then, Joe, and then the next thing that happened to me was when I was in chiropractic school, and one of the very first things you start doing is you're in the cadaver lab. Okay. And it's what you think it is, you're, with, people that have donated their body to science, and you dissect them. And I remember when you open up the body, and now I had come back into relationship with the Lord at this time, so that was more my lens. And I just remember, as kind of morbid as it is, but as you kind of crack open the chest, I get goosebumps with it, Joe. I looked at it and I said, how this is so intricate. This is so amazing. I know your wife's a doctor, surgeon. Like, it's so amazing to see that divine design. And in that moment, I knew my job was not to fix or heal people as a doctor. My job is to help us understand how to steward and honor what he already created. That's a very big difference. Okay. It's a different perspective of how to do this. Okay. And so for us, as in listening to this, maybe your believer, doesn't really matter. The great thing about God's grace, I think, especially when it comes to healing, is you don't have to believe in Jesus or God for him to beat your heart. He does that. That's universal grace, right? So he put the ear back on the soldier when Peter cut it off. I don't know if that soldier believed in Jesus, right? But Jesus put his ear back. I bet he believed in him after that. I bet he said, "Whoa, if you can put my ear back on my head, I want to listen to what you have to say." I was so overwhelmed by my healing and so grateful, right? Much like, again, back to the beginning, created in your likeness image, and you loved me so much that you thought I was valuable enough to come back and die for me. You didn't come back and die for me because we're such losers. Because this is an important point for any of us, believers or not. This is not, you're such a bad loser human, okay, that I got to come back because you messed it all up. This is, you're my son. How many times does he talk to us about it? He comes back and dies because he loves us, not because he's mad at us. And even some of our listeners are caught up in it because they're like, it's like this guy upstairs with lightning rods, waiting to, shoot us and hurt us and wreck our lives. Couldn't be now, he does have some suggestions to steward it though, right? Live righteously. You reap what you sow, right? And I say this to people too. And then, Joe, I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on this. People say, well, but he, depending on where you land on this, God decides how long we live and stuff like that, right? And I said, hey, I think that I don't disagree with that. Let's just say, right? What I'm talking about is the quality in between that, right? Living all day with migraine headaches and indigestion and you can't sleep and anxiety and stress. Dude, I don't know how many days I got. This might be my last one today. I don't know. Yeah. I just know I want to be able to maximize or glorify, God would say, right? That our lives are glorifying him, not just taking advantage of him. I don't want to use, right? I don't want to use him, I want to let the life that he gave me glorify him.
Wow. So you just threw a lot of punches there, and I want to unpack a couple. So one, you mentioned, and I want to give some props to your podcast about the body and the fact that it is designed to heal, and that is the name of your podcast, correct?
Yeah, that's the name of the podcast.
And it's awesome. And you mentioned my wife, and I think historically speaking, a lot of, surgeons like my wife and medical doctors, not necessarily butt heads, but maybe disagree on some of the things in terms of the chiropractors and doing the healthy stuff and the non-drugs. And even my wife, we listened to quite a few of your podcasts over the holidays. We were going up to Georgia and then up to Tennessee. And my own wife, who's a medical, she's like, hey, rewind that again. Like, what did they say? And like, it's awesome stuff. And it's tough to argue with it. I mean, just listening to your first little 40-second intro, it's pretty hard hitting. So I want to kind of pivot over that way on this notion that your body is designed to heal. And can you kind of just talk about the biggest mistakes? I think a lot of the listeners want to know, like, even your story. You did the drugs, and you probably know the numbers. Is the majority of America on some type of pill or drug?
Yeah. You're kind of opening up a can of worms here. And again, I don't want to.
We'll go high level.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a really critical question, Joe. I mean, what you're saying is, because I would say that we've largely in America, we've kind of gone down the route. If I could generalize, our story is kind of like, well, what can you do? It's kind of hard to take care of yourself. So I want to do something. I guess I'll take, drugs for my high blood pressure and insulin for my diabetes and so on and so forth. To give you a statistic, the former Secretary of Health, Secretary Tommy Thompson, his statement was, now this is no dummy, right?
Yeah.
And he said, 85 to 90% of disease, now this was his term, so don't get mad at me. He said was disease for dummies. What he meant was we cause it ourselves. What I would interject with that is we're being poor stewards. We're being poor stewards. Your body's designed to heal. What do I mean by that? And again, this isn't even like, I didn't come up with this, right? It's like we celebrated Martin Luther King Day recently, right? Like Martin Luther King did not come up with the idea of civil rights. Okay. Like that was in the word, right? That's where that concept came from. I don't want to give him the credit. He wouldn't have wanted the credit. He was simply saying we're all God's children. Okay. We're designed to heal. That's not like a philosophy or like, do I believe that? I mean, cut your finger, watch it heal. As a simple example, Joe, I mean, I'm sitting in a room right now that it's cold in Florida right now, actually. So I had to turn the heater on, okay? So even though my house is at 70 degrees, my body is at 98.6, hopefully, right? It's amazing that your body all on its own can do that. Okay, we call, maybe the secular word for it, Joe, is homeostasis. You're right. Or you look at the ocean, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, just the dynamics of, ocean life and migration patterns and, the cycle of life or whatever they call that, all the different, things that go on in that. It's amazing how it all kind of stays. So you break a bone, the body reknits that bone together, and it's actually stronger where it breaks. It will never break in the same place again. There's an incredible healing capacity of life. Now, listen, just being real straight here, you can do stuff to exceed that, right? I mean, you can make some poor choices. I mean, suicide would be an extreme example of that, right? God, and I want to mention this, God gives us free will. He gives us the ability to choose. Listen, if he gave you the choice to choose to accept him as your Lord and Savior, I think he's going to also let you choose what you put on your fork, right? He's going to also let you choose if you want to hit the gym or not. He's going to let you choose if you want to read his word today or not. So I think some people get caught up in this and they say, like, well, I mean, does my choices really matter? They matter immensely. He let the most important one be up to you, okay, where you want to spend eternity. So like, don't downplay the role of decisions that play in our life. So if he actually gives you the power to even end your life. Okay. Now, if that's true, Joe, then the opposite is true, right? He gives you the ability to make choices to dramatically improve that. So your body is, I would add, and I didn't name the podcast this, but I talk about it. The body's divinely designed to heal. How can I say that? As a believer, the opening lines of the Bible are, you are created in his likeness and image of God, which is really, really awesome. Okay, so there's a lot of problems in the world, Joe, but the one we probably have to spend the least amount of time on is the one thing created in his likeness and image. Now, I'm going to go a step further for people that are a little more ready to hear this. So, I'll tell you what, the deceiver, the devil, the liar, the accuser, he would love for you. He would love to turn your mind against the body that God created. He would love for you to think, it doesn't really heal that good. Nah, I don't know. God, you messed up. God, to literally take the one thing created in their likeness and image and say, yeah, God, you messed up. It's like, it reminds me of in the garden at the tree, right? Did he really say that? Are you sure? There's some stuff he doesn't want you to know. Thanks, God, for making the body. 2 cells come together, 9 months later, a living, breathing baby comes out, grows eyeballs, ears, kidneys, toes, fingernails, and then we go, thanks, God, we'll take it from here, right? We'll feed it what we want to feed it. We'll inject what we want to inject. We'll pill what we want to pill. We'll take it from it. That's a very prideful approach, right? Again, our job isn't to figure it out. Our job is to honor. I don't know, Joe, and you correct me, this is maybe not a fair statement of fishing, but I'm going to use it maybe as a metaphor, is probably the best way to fish when you most become their environment, if that's a fair way of saying it. Yep. It's, don't disturb. You're fooling them, or I don't know, to think that this is natural and real.
Yep.
Right? So it's not about forcing, the old, remember Crocodile Dundee when he throws the dynamite in the water fishing? Like, that's a real, that's a real flesh way of doing it, right? But the best fishermen are the ones that can go in there and, right, make the least disturbance, and it looks like it's natural for them.
Finesse is the word. Yep.
Finesse. So for our bodies, the greatest way to get the best results is to be as in alignment, stewarding it the best that we can. Not, smoking 2 packs a day, drinking a fifth of whiskey, watching 4 hours of TV a night on 8 medications and going, come on, God, where are you? There's an old story I heard from a pastor one time, and this guy had, some diseases that were very lifestyle related. And the guy asked the pastor to pray for him. And the pastor, this is the way he told me the story. He says, I'm going to pray for you, but I don't think you're going to like what I'm going to be praying. And in his statement, what they say, I'm going to pray for you to give up the brownies. I'm going to pray for you to get on the treadmill. I'm going to pray for you to take control and steward your life, right? I'm not going to pray for, because the diseases that you're having, that you think you're having, experiencing, are because of the choices you're making, right? And so I think we have to take this, I'm sure you have a lot of female listeners as well, but and male listeners, this idea of responsibility, right? We just need to take responsibility for our lives. And the minute we just hand them off and say, oh, well, what are you going to do? We would never do that to our kids. You got kids, you'd never say, heck with it. Eat whatever you want, kiddo. Do whatever you want. Watch TV as much as you want. Be on social media. You would never do it because you're trying to steward, right, their life for their outcome. Now, you and I as parents fully need God's grace to pull that off at any level of effectiveness, right? But
so I want to circle back because we never really closed the story on you. I know as a listener, there are a lot of us who are, I don't want to say addicted, but maybe that's the right word, on something, whether it be the blood pressure medication or migraines or depression or whatever it might be. And you told a story of being on some kind of drug with, I'm sure it was a real drug, active ingredients, and doesn't sound like it was just something you bought at Walgreens, and you did it for 3 years. You get off of it, and all of this cancer or precancerous cells and lesions are going away. That does sound like a miracle to me. How did you do that? What was the answer? What did this other person have you do that enabled you to finally get off? Because I know if you ask most people in the street, hey, should I eat healthy? Yeah. And if you ask the same person who is on some kind of drugs, they know they don't want to be on it forever. No one wants to be held hostage to some type of pill the rest of their life. But at the same point, you get off of it, and all of a sudden there's just pain and you want it to go away. How do you do that?
Yeah. So, great question, and I'll try to answer it as helpfully as I can.
Or at least in your own story, right? Because you lived through it.
So for me, it was 2 primary things. Now you have to remember, this was, I hate to say this was over, pushing over 20 years ago now, right? Yeah, over 20 years ago. And so, gluten wasn't known about at that time, really, right? Food allergies weren't talked about like they are it wasn't even really thought about. Okay. Some of the more alternative worlds, it was kind of around, but it was still, you couldn't go to the grocery. If you went to the grocery store and you wanted gluten-free something, it wasn't an aisle for it, right? It was that meant, you buy lettuce because it doesn't have gluten in it. It wasn't like gluten-free breads, pick one of your 14. So for me, it was primarily 2 things. It was clean up my diet in ways, now you might have looked at it and said, that's pretty healthy, Ben. You're not living at McDonald's or something like that. But I'm Midwest guy. I was still living on a lot of grains, a lot of processed breads and grains. Okay. I was living on, I would probably say at the time I was very carb heavy, but I was working out a lot. So I was now, losing the weight. So I had to get off of heavy carbs, processed foods. There's foods that can be, it's like, Joe, you go to the grocery store now, you go to maybe a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods maybe, or something like that. And you can buy unhealthy natural food, right? Newman's Own Oreos are still loaded with sugars and, stuff like that. So I had to get more, and again, for this group on this line, more aligned with God's food, right? As close as I could to the way that God had designed that food to be. So it's waters and vegetables and fruits and clean proteins. Okay.
But you're not a vegan though.
I'm not a vegan. I am not a vegan. I want to say this for just a second. I just did a big workshop last night about New Year's resolutions, and we talked about this. For most of us, I think when you look, why do people, they go on paleo, they go on, keto, they go on, it doesn't, some, vegan. Most of the people, the reason they get results, and I'm not opposed to this, is because whatever they were starting from was so bad that just cleaning it up was better. Right. It's like throwing a fishing line in the water, a hook in the water, but with nothing on it. Like, I don't care about a hot dog, a piece of corn, or a worm. It's better than nothing on the hook. Okay, at least give them something to look at. So it's like just changing and being somewhat intentional about what you eat, you'll often get results. Okay, there's a lot of debate. There's been new documentaries about this. I've been in this world for a long time as far as watching it go. When my dad was battling stage 4 cancer, he was on a total raw vegan juice diet. Okay, so in certain extreme circumstances, there's some nutritional things to do. But for the typical person watching this, most of the advice, Joe, would be just getting rid of the junk you need to get rid of, right? The 6-pack of Coors Light every night, the bag of Doritos before bed with a bowl of ice cream. We don't have to debate that, right? And I'm, again, so that was part one. Now for me, you asked, and so for me, one of the big delineators for me is what got me into it was chiropractic adjustment. And that for some people is quite, like, what do you mean? So you mean you got your back cracked and your cancer lesions healed? Well, I don't know what to tell you other than that was my experience. It's like, in Revelation, it talks about the blood of the Lamb and the power of testimony. That's my testimony. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. However, there is very logical science behind this. The way God designed this, your brain sits here. It has a tail on it called your spinal cord. Out of those go nerves that go to every single tissue cell in your body. When the baby's developing in utero, the very first thing to develop is the spinal cord. And then out of that grows branches like trees, and off of those grow your organs. It's just how he designed it. I would, if I cut the nerve to your heart would stop beating. If I cut the nerve to your digestive system stops. So I had pressure on that, irritation. And because of that, and this is what happened, because of that, my stomach wasn't digesting food right. And then when they added drugs on top of it, it slowed it down even more. My food was just getting stored as fat. That was what happened. So once that got restored to normal, the pressure got off of my nerves. And I've seen this now, 13,000 patients in my career. I've seen this happen countless times where people come in, they've had acid reflux problems or digestive or constipation or diarrhea or ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease or all sorts of crazy stuff, right? And you just start getting some things in alignment. See, this only sounds, I wrote this just last night to a friend of mine. The only reason this sounds crazy, Joe, is because it's new for people. All right? I mean, back to the civil rights concept, there was people that had never, they'd never even entered, and forgive me for it being a little bit of a tough topic, but some people had never even entertained the thought that people of a different color are equal, right? It was, my daddy said it wasn't so, right? And so this idea that the body's designed to heal and the capacities and the power of that, it might seem to a listener like, man, this guy is a crackpot. I thought it was weird enough on sunblock, but now what? And so, but I would just say, I would challenge a person on that. And I would just say, back to Genesis, right? What I'm talking about is just that your body was, what he said, created in his likeness image, divinely designed to heal. Sometimes I use this metaphor for me. I take, we live in Florida, all the beaches, all the sand, right? I think about all the sand of all, and under and in the ocean and all that. That's God's infinite wisdom, okay? And then our flesh knowledge is like one grain of sand. It's like, compared to God's, it's like a speck, right? And so what I choose to do is this. I say, hey, I'm going to put my faith in all that other sand. Okay, it's just, if you're an odds guy, my odds are better with all that than me trying to lean on this little speck of sand. Okay, and I'm going to put my faith in there. And since that's pretty vast and unknowable, then I'm going to have to, my best thing is to try to live in alignment with his laws, not my ones that I want him to be. His, and I don't even know if you like the word laws, but his suggestions of stewardship, right? His outline, his ways. And then that's the best way. I heard this the other day. I saw it on a fortune cookie thing of all things. And it said, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it basically said, if we had, in order for us to be able to understand God, God would have had to be so stupid that he would never have been able to create us to start with, right? We're trying to solve an unanswerable question that's not ours to solve. We're not here to figure it out. We don't need to figure out how to create life. I've said this before, Joe, and this is the last thing I'll say. In all history of all man, the thousands of years, scientists, all of that stuff, whatever, they've never made one single living cell. Okay. They can't put all the parts and pieces together and say, all right, here we go, sell, start living. Okay. In the 40 minutes we've talked, your body's made millions of them. The power that God put inside your body made millions of them. So, sometimes people think, oh, I'm kind of radical or extreme or something like that. I feel quite the opposite, actually. I feel it's pretty logical to me, right? I mean, I just put my stake and my faith in the thing that is beating my heart right now and beats my heart when I sleep and breathes my lungs. And I'm going to do my best job to steward it. And by stewarding it, I mean living in line with God, not, living upside down my lifestyle and pouring medications all over. We're 5% of the population of the world. The United States is 5% of the population of the world. We take upwards of 70% of all the prescription drugs. We take 95% of the OxyContin. We're one of the sickest nations in the world. This is the third year in the row that our life expectancy has gone down. We have the sickest generations of kids in the history of the world. 54% of our kids have a chronic disease. The number one area of growing right now of cancer is childhood cancer. Okay. The millennial generation is dying at alarming rates that they've never seen before in history. 40-year-olds dropping dead of heart attacks. I'm not impressed. We're not stewarding it well. And we're not going to figure this out by just medicating ourselves more, trying to live outside of God's laws and then try to bring man's ideas in to fix them. All right. And so we need to kind of, pause and think about this and steward our bodies. Now, are there extreme cases, Joe? Right? Are there times and places? You follow me? Of course, right? Absolutely. I hope I never need your wife's services, but if I do, I'll use her. Right? That's the point. Right? But I'm sure she doesn't hoping for me to have a need for her. I'm imagining that she's not. Right? Yeah. Right? I mean, we would love that, to shut down the cancer centers. You're right. The revenue stream of a hospital might not enjoy that, but humanity would celebrate that. We ought to. And so, our hope is just, and really as believers, or even not a believer in here, I would just hope that you would maybe today have a new appreciation for the innate wisdom inside of you that beats your heart and say, man, what can I do today to take a little better care of that? My goodness, you come home and you clean your boat off at night. I'm always amazed when we come in from fishing and, the crew, man, they wash that boat down, they scrub it all down, they tie everything up, spends another, hour and a half just getting the boat cleaned up. I think, man, if we came home at the end of the day and just took an hour and a half to clean up our bodies, we'd be in good shape, right? Wow, but why do we take good care of our boats? Because they're, $1 million and they're expensive and we want to, whatever, and so we can take, a challenge to the fishermen, right? Take as good care of your body as you do your boat.
Woo. And if you don't believe you have $1 million body, then you need to start rethinking. What was that, Zig Ziglar? Do you remember that whole thing where he talked about how much your body's worth? I'll try to do my best. So he's talking in front of an audience, and he says, "How many of you guys feel like you're worth $1 million? Like right now, worth $1 million?" And a few hands went up, and he's like, "Are you guys kidding me? Like every single hand in this entire auditorium should be up." And he's like, speaking of hands, he's like, I'll prove it to you. He's like, how many of you guys right now will be willing to give up your arm for $1 million? Like literally, I get to come off and just cut them off. You lose 1-2 arms, doesn't matter. And then he went on and really perturbed this and made it obvious. He's like, all right, so everyone here says they're not willing for $1 million cash. I'll give you $1 million check to cut off your arms and your legs, cut off a big chunk of your body, and not a single person wanted to do it. He's like, there's proof that your body that God created for you is worth way more than $1 million. And I thought that was so true. And I think after hearing you talk about it, and we'll probably have another episode just talking about diet, because that was the one. It was your guest speaker who was a doctor. I don't remember where she was from.
Yeah, Dr. Shanahan, Dr. Kobe Bryant's doctor.
Yeah. And that was one that we listened to twice, basically. And it was a lot about just the foods that are in our own pantries. And it really helped us clean up, because we were doing a decent job. But, I guess it's all, figuratively speaking. That was like an eye-opener. So I'll definitely link to that on our blog post. But two, I think for most of us, I think the worst thing that you can do is listen to this and then all of a sudden try to rearrange and change your entire life, because you will get burnt unless you're literally like dying like you or like something. But if you just feel like, all right, I want to take a step in the right direction, I'll tell you what I did. And this made a massive impact. I used to eat pretzels every single night. And like in a given week, I might go through 2 or 3 bags of pretzels. And I'm not talking about like,
was it Roll's Gold? What was your drug of choice? Did you have a favorite?
Snyder's of Hanover. And, you know, I was, you're going to get a kick out of this for you guys listening. You now know one more thing about me I've never shared before. So I've always been a fan of pretzels. I don't know what it is. I was even part of the Snyder's of Hanover, like, you know, pretzel club, like where I would get the samples before it went out to tell them, like, you know, if it was good or not. Like I ate pretzels every single day. And I think as you get older and you get more of the dad bod, at least for me, I was like, you know what, that's my excuse to have a little bit more. I've worked hard today. I worked out. I went to the gym. And all of a sudden, like, you know, you go through a bag of pretzels every 2 days. I mean, that's right before I'm going to bed. It's horrible. And I cut that out. That was just one thing. I didn't go rearrange. I didn't start shopping at Whole Foods every day. I literally just cut out pretzels. And dude, and all you guys listening, I'm telling you, it was like game changing. I have more energy. I'm sleeping better. I'm like, I never feel like I have to take that 2 o'clock nap anymore. I lost 6 pounds in probably 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, like without changing anything else, all by eliminating one thing, which was pretzels. And I don't really miss them that much. And I'm still occasionally, I'll have some in the middle of the day. So it's not like I'm just completely, I'm against pretzels. But that was just one small step. And all of you guys have that. Maybe it's for some of you, it's ice cream. I know a lot of my friends have that. Oh, it's just one little scoop. And then it turns into, I've had a bad day and it's 2 or 3 scoops. If you just eliminate that one thing and make that one small change. And what's funny, now that I've done that, I'm finding myself wanting to eat like salads and stuff more. And I still eat meat, still eat fish, still eat steak. But, man, it's just that one thing. So my recommendation is take one step, like eliminate one thing or change one thing in your diet, and you will be shocked over a 30-day period. It ain't going to happen overnight, but over a 30-day period, what it's going to do to your body, your mental health, and just like your energy too, which was a big, big thing for me.
Joe, that's really, I just want to encourage you. Not only is that really good advice, the science agrees with you. All of the good books on habit change and making lifestyle change, they all support exactly what you said. And the other little caveat to that, they often say is, instead of just for mindset, is even if you're not going to change certain habits, try to add a good thing. So it's like, if you still want to have your donut in the morning, throw an apple or an orange with it, and so you're adding some good things in there. I just want to mention a couple things that came to mind as we closed down here, Joe. One was, the reason it's so powerful for those of us that are, and the reason nutrition gets a lot of, attention, and rightfully so, is because that's the raw materials our body uses to rebuild itself. A lot of people don't realize how much turnover there is in our bodies. Okay. And so, we know, our skin and things like that, but literally the research shows that our body is in constant states of flux. Our bones turn themselves over, our stomach heals, all of these things, and it uses what we put in it. Your body doesn't build itself out of calories. It doesn't build itself out of sugar. It builds out of nutrients and building blocks of physiology. So if the body has the ability to heal, it might be we're just trying to ask it to build itself out of pretzels and ho-hos and whiskey. And so then you're going to get in, I'm teasing, but it's a really important point that maybe for our listeners adds a little more emphasis. It's not just like, hey, and I'm not saying you're saying pretzels are bad, so I don't eat them anymore, but also it's really not giving the body much to do to rebuild itself. It's not good fuel for the car. Your boat won't run as well because it's got bad gas. And so as you're looking to make these changes, consider the fact that it's, literally, the mom was right? Our grandmas were right. You are what you eat. And so there's some real truth to that. It just, it's just over time. And don't get caught up, like you said, a lot of us, like talk Dr. Kate and things like that. As you are on this journey, I couldn't agree more. Don't let your newness to it, or the concepts are a little bit challenging, and man, does that mean I gotta be, eating twigs and berries and, foraging in the forest, and, am I gonna be one of those crunchy tree huggers, whatever your mindset on that is? That's not what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about stewarding our bodies that God gave us so we can, glorify Him, and really just take good care. I remember, Joe, you think about this, if again, as believers, as, or those of you that aren't, if, you ever, those stories where somebody donates an organ, maybe you get somebody's heart, or we've got a friend who's got his daughter needed a heart transplant, and, and is alive today because of that. And, you think about if I have ever gone through something like that, you would be very grateful to that person that did that, right? And I think you'd want to honor them by living your best life for them, right? It would be weird. Somebody gives you a liver and you just jack it up by boozing it all day long, right? It'd be like, well, man, that wasn't great. So, when we say somebody, gave an organ so you could die without preaching, that's exactly what the Lord and Savior did, right? He took our place on the cross so we could live a life abundantly and live with him eternally in heaven. So there is a piece of this, without getting religious, that is really just our call as believers, right? Just to steward what he gave us, even if we don't like to, even if we don't want to, we're called to do that out of gratitude and thankfulness, the fact that we have breath. So I hope this was helpful for your listeners. Yes. And I hope it's a perspective maybe that they, hadn't considered.
Yeah, and it was super helpful, and we'll definitely have you back to talk a little bit more. I really want to hammer down a lot of the diet, and it's something I personally, still struggle with, even though I got, pretzels out. It's still, and I sent you a text about it after listening to that one podcast about, where do you even shop, right? And does this, because I think a lot of us too think, well, gosh, if I get just 100% healthy snacks and everything, it's going to cost me a fortune. And I don't think that's true. That's for a whole another podcast. And so everyone, please, if you wanted to learn more right now, definitely go check out Design to Heal podcast. Really, really good stuff, hard-hitting stuff. You guys, man, you speak the truth, and you got some great guests on too. I've really enjoyed listening to the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on today. And yes. I love Unchurched. I love, I think there's an important place for, churches moving outside of the walls, right? And a lot of us, because of the way that life is, this is where we actually get relationships, is with brothers and sisters in our workplace and the things that we do, our hobbies and things like that. And it doesn't have to be separate. We're called to have an integrated life. And so those of you that are tuning into this and are listening, this is kind of like, I don't want to put too much pressure on you, Joe, but this is like part of my church now, right? Is just listening. And so I think it's awesome. And it's okay. And just as we kind of explore these topics, stewarding our bodies, just another arm of our relationship, right? That some of us just haven't considered. So thanks for having me on. Bless your listeners, and have an awesome week.
Yes, thank you all. And my email, Joe, @saltstrong.com. I would love to hear from you about this episode and any other ideas. As you mentioned, Ben, I think this is kind of becoming a church. Maybe it's a stepping stone for people. I hope it is. I hope no one just relies on this for their church, but I think it's a great way to talk about, different topics, stuff that you might not hear in the traditional Catholic church or wherever you grew up going to. I know as an Episcopalian, and I never heard a lot of the same stuff that we're bringing up here. There's a lot of the questions that I had and a lot of the questions that I struggle with. So let me know anything that you have in your mind, or if you've been hurt by the church, or just skeptical about God and Jesus and religion or whatever it might be. Shoot me an email. Anything goes. This is wide open. We don't ever want this to be a sermon per se, just an honest, open discussion. So love to hear from you. Thank you so much for all the support. Dr. Ben, we'll see you in a couple weeks, dude.
Awesome, brother. Take care. God bless.
Yes, sir. Peace.
'Cause fishing